More chairs too.
Got 9 o'clock on July 7th, 2025. I'll call the Chickasaw County Board of Supervisors to convene. Roll call, all members are present, along with Board Secretary Sheila Shackleton. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda as presented? Motion by Scott, second by Travis to approve the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Approve the minutes from last week, June 30th, 2025. Motion by Travis, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Travis, second by Steve to approve the minutes from June 30th. That was presented in the board packet. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain. Isaac will abstain. Motion carried 4-0. Ryan, do you want to give your?
Whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Yeah, whatever you want, you guys want, great worship.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, yeah, so I'd like to propose, and I know Chad was up here from County Conservation last year about something like this. A capital projects fund for the sheriff's office that we create. It's be a restricted fund. Obviously, the dollars be earmarked for whether it be police supplies, equipment, that could be from vehicles to weapon updates to less lethal updates to with my camera system. I know in about 2 years, I've got to start budgeting additional $20,000 to $25,000 for our offsite cloud services. It's part of our GTAC system. That's just part of it. It was included in our initial build 2.5 years ago. And part of the deal that, part of that was the services for the cloud storage, the back-end system that Dave's office has access to we're able to send them to him and other attorneys and so on and so forth. So I just thought, why don't we start a capital projects funds for, maybe I'm able to purchase a vehicle or need a vehicle and it's not budgeted for, but I've got money in capital projects. I hate this comment, it's kind of like a savings account for such, but it lessens the ask budget after year after year after year for the budgets. So I saw that, everybody knows I've got a pretty good ending fund balance. Thought maybe we could take some of that money and maybe jumpstart that capital projects fund. And then we either budget for it every year, put money into it, or we see what the ending fund balance is at the end of every year and decide once a year we put a deposit into there, see what's left, put a cap on it, maybe $200,000, $150,000, whatever we think is a fair number. I just think it's something we need to start really working towards and putting that in there. So we've kind of got that, I hate to say it, reserve fund or something, hey, we're in a budget X amount for a vehicle, maybe we'll pull the upfitting out of capital projects or vice versa. So just something I want the board to consider doing. I know the board's got one for different projects that they have going on and stuff. I just feel it's something that would definitely benefit our office. A taser upgrade, that was a big topic of discussion this year. But the things like that all of a sudden come up that we feel is a good time to do it, maybe not budgeted for, but we can pull out of capital projects fund.
Yeah, I think we'll look into it. Just wondering if, my only concern, right, and probably this, how many restricted funds can we have and not act as a savings account? To me, I was always told we're supposed to levy taxes and spend taxes, not save money. So I think I'll look into it with other counties and see where the private auditor thinks.
I know the city of New Hampton does it. They've got something like that similar down there. So I know other government entities do it, how they set them up. That's not my forte.
Yeah.
So I just think it's something that we need to look into. It's just, I know in at least 2 years, I'm gonna come and say additional $20,000 in the budget. we have to cut expenses somewhere else, maybe, I don't know, but with this year's ending fund balance that I had, of about under $230,000 that was given back, thought it'd be a good time to maybe jumpstart that capital projects fund.
Anybody got a question?
No, I think it's a good idea. We just need to look in and see if it can be done and how to do it.
For sure.
I agree.
Thanks, guys.
Public comment? I know there was one request.
But that's for, at a different, when we discuss the ending fund balance.
Joan, is this on like the Board of Health or just in general county? Both. There's a request here from Joan Cano to talk about the fund balance, expenditures and revenue. You guys okay to let her talk at that time, or should it be done now?
Yeah. Okay.
At that time?
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on then. Oh, sorry, I did forget you. Ray Arnell, County Assessor.
At this time, I just wanted to introduce you to our new employee, Thomas Bennett. Laura will be leaving, and Thomas comes to us from Webster County. He was in the assessor's office there for a couple of years. And he and his girlfriend have moved to Waverly. She has taken a job with that school district. So we were fortunate that way. So we'll just take this time to introduce you folks to Thomas. And we're just glad to have him on board and find somebody with some experience.
Perfect. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And you're gonna see here, Joan's former auditor, Jeff Burnett, EMA, Chad is our conservation. Terry Johnson sits in here, and he's also on our board review.
Okay.
And Bob's the editor, David the paper, Dave's our county attorney, and Ryan's the sheriff.
Right.
So yeah,
Gonna be a whole bunch right here.
Oh, yeah. That's all right.
so yeah.
Board of Supervisors, Chair, Vice Chair, and then 3 other members.
Awesome.
Nice to be when the subject comes up.
If
it comes up.
it comes up. No,
Policies in place.
no, Terry.
I have a public comment too. Where are we at with the Cedar Lake Improvement Council? You guys are on that, am I doing a 2080 to get rid of that, or are we doing that 2080? Haven't heard anything, the file's still off.
I have not heard anything from the mayor or any city councilman about having a meeting or anything. I haven't heard a word since, probably a year.
So it's time for us to propose getting rid of it then?
I would
As
say
board
that
members, or-
probably be a good idea.
Okay. Well, I need some direction, I guess. It's just been on my floor. I'm trying to clean up old projects. So, who's on it? I think you and Jake, or you and Travis?
Yeah, Travis. I'll
See
put it on
if you can
this.
find out or put it on the agenda, please. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Conservation Director Chad Humpel. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning.
Discuss volunteer position at Dearborn Lake. I know your board met last Tuesday. Any guidance or direction?
Yeah, I mean, again, just here for more discussion. The board voted on Tuesday night to not issue a 1099 at this time. I think you guys seen the minutes. They don't, again, kind of know what the difference is there between those positions. Had some discussion with David, again, I guess looking for the next step or what the next plan is.
I'm just wondering if it's more of an IRS issue. Sheila office, and Sheila is the accounts payable and payroll department. What I know of getting 1099s myself for miscellaneous compensation, not receiving money, but received a hotel stay or another nonprofit, right? I just think it's an IRS rule. I could be wrong.
Yeah, so I took a half a day last week and flew off the dust off the old tax books and then did some additional research, which was fun. The bottom line is, I think as it's written now, the park board volunteered. is clearly bartering for services. I think the way that it's written says that they're gonna receive no benefits other than the waiver of the normal camping fee. They're gonna provide the campsite, and because paragraph 5 talks about the requirements for voting, and Chad and I talked about this in the hallway last week. I think that's the big linchpin here, is that there's a requirement for it, and it does say in there, park volunteer will be required to submit time work to CCCB staff on a bi-weekly basis. I think to me, that sounds more like work than it does a fringe benefit. So you can go down a rabbit hole for days here, and there are attorneys, tax attorneys who specialize in stuff that litigate for millions of dollars, and I'm sure with the IRS, it's very complicated. But the bottom line is where we're at is, are we bartering for income, in my eyes, or is this a fringe benefit? Anytime you barter for income, that is a taxable event. Anytime you have a fringe benefit, that is not a taxable event. And non-employees can indeed get and receive fringe benefits. So to me, I view the campground hosts as more of a fringe benefit because they're required to live there in order to perform their functions. If they were offered extra money to live outside somewhere else, it's not a fringe benefit. There's a 3-part test. I can bore you with it as to whether or not it's a fringe benefit. The bottom line is, I think we need to rewrite both of these in the off season. And for the campground hosts, I think it needs to be clear that they're required to live there. And for instance, if we have campsites 1 through 20, we no longer offer the campsite that they're living in as available to the public. Therefore, the public cannot come in and say, hey, you're taking something away from us that we could generate revenue for. No, that one's not for rent. It's specifically for a campground host that lives there. That's their responsibility, is to live there and be the campground host. I think that's 100% okay. The issue with the mowing is a little bit more complicated because he's not required to live there to mow. We have to make that a requirement. And then it would look more like a fringe benefit than it would barter for income. I don't think there's any doubt right now in my mind. I stand by what we said a week ago, that the current system that we have, as we have it structured, is clearly bartering for income. It clearly means 1099. Now, how that works, Conservation Board has said no. The auditor's office has said yes. I'll have to get into that in December, I suppose. And I'm certainly, I'll make sure I'm clear on this for the newspaper everyone that's listening. I'm not passing judgment on whether this is a good idea or not. You know, I have a lot of these things up here, people come to me and call my office and say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? That's not my job to make policies. It's not my job to decide whether these are good ideas or not. My job is to try to interpret the law and keep people in line with the state code and federal law. So that's what my opinion is. So I think definitely in the off-season, Chad and I can work together to try and tighten these up a little bit and draft them a little bit differently, so they look a lot more like, you know, fringe benefit than bargaining.
Well, and that was what the kind of the final discussion there as well with the Conservation Board is they set policy and camping rates. So that was kind of their thing, like, so we'll just take that campsite and remove that from the rental agreements or from, you know, the daily rental fee and make it similar to what we got set up. And then that way we don't need to issue that 1099. So I know we haven't gotten beyond the $600 threshold that, you know, I think is what Sheila's after, right? So whether or not we can set that up or they can do that yet at this point in time, you know, for the balance of this season, so that we can clean that up is kind of where we left it. And then again,
I'm fine with working it out if you want to. Now that it's fresh in my mind and I have all this research. So,
well, I would think if we could just get it cleaned up and then that way we're good. And then, you know, our agreement with our volunteer, we should be good that way.
Okay.
And then I think hopefully everybody's happy at that point in time. Rewrite that contract. And then like I said, I'll discuss that with the board next month. But I think that sounds like stuff that is very feasible and easy to do. I mean,
right.
Should be good.
Anything else from the board members? Yeah, thanks, you for working it out. I see Joel's here, but we'll do discuss the weed control at tower sites. This was brought up last week to myself. Mr. Bernance did call me on Thursday, and it sounds like he's been taking care of it. Just so the board knows, he's hired a contractor to take care of the anchor site. I'm hoping that you do the other 2 sites.
Yeah.
Just the count, just what we rent from the landowners. And you hire somebody that has a license, so we shouldn't have to worry about any accidental spray. Just get with the other tenant, make sure we don't damage his crops. Any other concern, comment? No. Thanks, Jeff. Did you have anything else to add? Discuss EMS Director Joel Knutson, Rancho. Discuss purchase from donation fund.
Yeah, so you guys have seen this invoice from Laird also, a little bit of backstory just for everybody listening. So we applied for a grant through Region 2 Emergency Preparedness for a high fidelity simulator mannequin to better train our crews on CPR and patient assessment. This is a $15,000 mannequin that through the help of the grant and then cost share between the 3 EMS agencies within the county. We each got this mannequin for less than $3,000. So pretty big deal. It's gonna be pretty awesome for us. You'll notice on the invoice that the EMS department is paying the highest portion out of the 3, just because we are the recipients of the grant from Region 2. So we chose to use donated funds per how we set up that account. It has to be an agreement between the board and myself, the director, to use those donated funds once all the paperwork has been submitted. Once Region 2 cuts their final checks before the 15th of July, we'll get that check back to be put back into the donation fund for that grant.
So per the policy, this is Fund 0038 EMS Donation Fund. Is requesting to be spent, I think, $8,755.58. Out of that fund, in return of $5,000 roughly grant.
$5,040 or $80
Will be reimbursed in the near future. So this is why we see this today. He's requesting out of that 0038 fund. Is there a motion to approve the item purchased by the donation of EMS fund? So moved.
Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Steve, to authorize a purchase from the donation fund 0038 in the amount of $8,755.58. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Discuss and approve the Heart Notice.
Just with that also, we do have a signed MOU between the 3 agencies that they've approved, and that will be entered in if it. Okay. When it is approved, it will be entered in.
All 3 people, Jeff and you and
Dana.
Nashville. All right, thank you. Discuss and approve Heart and Risk Pool that was submitted to the auditor's office a couple weeks ago.
Do you have yours, Jeff?
$56,082.20 is due by July 31st. We had some issues when we saw the draft, and we got those solved on the liability side and the workers' comp side.
We did, yeah, the only thing that I questioned a little bit was the property insurance for the station. Because we were moved into that station in June of last year. So the project was done prior to July 1st. And we saw a pretty significant increase in that property year over year, fiscal year over fiscal year. So either we grossly undercovered it last year, and they finally caught up with it, and then maybe it was a timing thing. Maybe when they first valued it, it wasn't quite done yet, so it was valued at a lower dollar. But then yeah. So that was the only thing I really questioned, I guess. Everything else was pretty much even or within that percentage of increase that they thought.
Is there a motion to approve the invoice for art and risk pool? $56,082.20.
Full move.
Okay. Motion by Travis, second by Scott to approve the invoice for art and risk pool for the EMS department. $56,082.20. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye, anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Discuss RFP for a generator at the EMS location. I did talk to Joel this morning just to get him up to speed. I did visit with a local contractor. He is getting me specs for the transfer switch and the generator. No numbers. And once we get those specs, hopefully today, I'll bring them back next week to go out for an RFP. And then pick a list of contractors. This is a normal electrical install. They're gonna set a generator on the northeast side of the building. Hook it up to Black Hills Natural Gas, that's the source. And then run some wires inside the building with a transfer switch so we can kill the New Hampton power and the generator will start. Any questions of where we're moving with that? Just to see how much it costs. And don't know, Joel, I guess we haven't talked about it. I'm not, anywhere from 10 to 20,000, I would say this is gonna cost. Is it okay to use your budget or is there?
It wasn't budgeted in. We had talked about it, probably a year ago now. And it died there, basically. It is something that, would be super beneficial should we need it. When you look at 10 to 20,000, we can't get an ambulance out. It's gonna be way costlier than that, but, like you and I spoke this morning, I'd like to see what's out there, maybe a little bit for some FEMA grants or some surplus items. If we can find the generator surplus, and all we have to do is purchase the transfer switch, I think that'd be
Install.
huge. Yeah.
No, so we have time for that. Just down on the agenda is talk about a budget amendment, but in the meantime, you do have 50,000 in equipment purchase that you didn't use any of it last year.
We did not, but we did not put it in for this
Did not put it in
year.
this year. So we'll double check with all those numbers before we say yes on the contract.
Sounds good.
Unless, is there room in the donation fund?
Potentially,
If we can find a surplus one somewhere.
potentially, yeah, and we'll see how that kind of, I don't know what's out there, to be honest. It's one of those things that we talked about, and then it got put on the back burner, and you don't think about it again until you lose power.
Exactly. Anything else on that, board members? I'll try to bring it back next week with some specs of what we want a contractor to do. Other thing is department update, anything new or exciting? Or-
Yeah, no, the 4 new employees that we brought on are all in the onboarding process, going well through all work shifts, getting them to hopefully help fill some gaps in the schedule. Now that I'm back, tidying up fiscal year end, working with the billing company. Biggest exciting thing, I guess, is our GEMT supplemental kicked in July 1st. And the final stipend was about $1,200 per Medicaid call, so it's pretty big. Other than that, new year, new grant cycle, so that's where we're starting with a lot of that. I'm assuming you all got the email employee perspective survey that I sent out. Not great response, I shouldn't say. A good response of answers, not a great number of responses, about 2/3 is what we got back, but that's kind of par for the course. So, working on getting through employee reviews, and that's all I can think of. Anything else for me?
I just mentioned this morning to you about your quarterly report.
Yeah, yep.
Hopefully next week sometime maybe.
I'll have it later today. I'll submit it back to the auditor. So,
Plus miles, all the
I see him on there all the time, and
We're busy, which is good. Medic 1 and Medic 2, 50, 60,000 miles, Medic 3, 40. We are catching Medic 3 back up. It is our primary transfer truck. So we're still flip-flopping every month, Medic 1, Medic 2, down in Fredericksburg back and forth. And Medic 3 is doing all of the transfers. Seeming like we're taking more and more out of Floyd County. They're struggling over there, staffing and whatnot, so anything that we can take is good. This new supplemental add-on to Medicaid will certainly help the revenue side of that. But yeah, other than that, no major truck issues that we're seeing at this point. So, status quo.
Alright,
What do we have with the quarterly number for the city's contribution?
at the end of June 30th, 799,
Okay, another one away,
but,
another one away.
not yet, we gotta wait until the 15th.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know, we're gonna have payroll, one more payroll,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of claims.
Yeah, I can't see anything, but then we've got revenue coming in too, on the top side, so, yeah, I can't see. I think in the month of June, we had $50,000 in revenue, 60,000 in revenue, so, I can't foresee there being
No,
anything to discuss with them, so.
and the one we just approved comes out of donation, so
Right.
can't confirm, but I think it'll be okay. It'll be above the 750, but we'll see on the 15th.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Discuss county social service 28 agreement dissolution. County Attorney Dave worked on this last week for us. Okay, got that in the board packet. Anything surprising, Dave, or?
No, I just think you're one of the member counties that spells out that what we're doing. And we talked about last week, I just think provide notice, and Dick and I talked about this, whether counties want to use this, I'm trying to pass it along.
So we know CSS has, is dissolved, I guess, on June 30th. Still need to do some payroll and some bills and some prior claims, so we still need to vote. We still need to have quorum at the meetings, so this lets us give notice, and our last day on or before, if all liabilities have been paid, will be June 30th of 2026. Is there a motion to approve with board chair signature?
we'll move.
Second. Motion by Travis, second by Isaac, to approve notice of withdrawal from the 2080 agreement and approval of termination of the region. Any discussion? Roll call, Travis.
Aye.
Isaac. Aye. Steve.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Jake, aye. Motion is carried 5-0.
Get a clean copy of that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Approved quarterly reports for the auditor, veteran service, and the recorder, which was in your packets. Veterans Affairs with 0. And the recorder has hers there. They collected, looks like 83,000 and some dollars. Sorry, total fees collected was 111,000, and then total fees paid to the state was 83,000. And then the auditor's report was a total of 3,910. VA was 0, right? I don't see that on the back unless you guys do.
It's doubled up, man.
It's double up, oh,
Is it double up?
that's, okay, that's where I see it, okay, that's 0. Yep. Thanks, Isaac.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the quarterly reports ending June 30th for the auditor, veteran service, and the recorder?
Sorry.
Motion by Isaac, seconded by Steve, to approve the quarterly reports for those 3 said departments. ending June 30th, 2025. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, anybody opposed? Motion is carried. All right, discuss fiscal year 24-25 ending fund balances. Just before we get started here, these are all working documents. I would say they're close. But there is one mistake that we saw this morning. That one revenue got put into one expenditure.
No, an expenditure got put into a revenue. So that's why when I had a request for the revenue, I did not get it out because it's still working documents. And I should actually wait a couple weeks before we submit this so I can go do a thorough clean and go through it. But I know people are very anxious to hear what's going on. So from what I can tell, as of June 30th, and where did my sheet go? I just want this one. The fund balance for general fiscal, or for general basic was $2,939,929.63. And if you guys recall, during budget sessions, we were shooting for a 1.6. So what is the difference? The difference is, if you look at your sheets, we had, and I had also gave you guys a sheet that showed what the department said that they were gonna give us so we could figure out our fund balance. And we had figured $353,000 coming in. And we knew that it more likely to be over, but that's what we could bank on. So that's the number we used to get the 1.6. The difference is, we had the sheriff saying that he was gonna give $100,000 back. Well, actually, he gave $229,000 back, which is $129,000 more. The Board of Supervisors did not give me a total that they were giving back. They ended up giving back $13,441. I didn't give a total because when we were doing this, I didn't realize I was gonna be losing someone. So I was kind of hanging on to mine, but I ended up giving back $45,862. The treasurer gave back $2,700. And those right there were numbers that we were not anticipating, along with general services. We were looking at 124,000 coming back and we had 244. Data processing, we had another 63,000. So as everything's coming back, and I know I'm asking for these totals in February, and we have like 4 months, before the end of the fiscal period, and it's hard to say, because I'm in the same boat with my department. But there is a difference, and it came, so we were expecting $353,000 coming back, when in a sense we had 926,945 come back. So we had $576,000 more than what we anticipated coming back.
Within the budgets.
Within the budgets, about 576,000. So when you say, well, that doesn't account for the difference between my ending fund balance that I anticipated and what it is today, I did not look at interest, and we had like $336,000 more come in for interest than what we had budgeted on. And we had, let's see, like my department brought in almost $6,000 more. The sheriff's department too, where did you go?
It's right at 55,000 more.
$55,000 more than what you had budgeted. So going down and through these, and then, like I said, if you give me a week or so to really go through them all. But if you're wondering, well, could this have been anticipated? I've always been taught, when in doubt, always recognize all your expenses and none of your revenues. And it's hard for me if someone budgets $50,000 for me to feel comfortable taking from them an extra 20,000, because I think that they're gonna give it back to me if they didn't tell me that they were. You know, and that's why I sent out the emails, you know, letting me know what you anticipate in giving back. And it's just an educational thought, you know, I guess, everything, you know, on the fund balancing is guesswork. And yes, it could probably get down to a science, but we're not there yet for looking at everything, so.
And then you have, not picking on any department, but you have 3 departments that thought they would bring in more revenue, and in turn, they did not. So then that's like a double whammy of not getting money in, and somebody has to fill that gap if the revenues were not coming in like it was supposed to be. Sheila did talk about the treasurer's office bringing in interest. That number is,
$336,133.
that is just GBGS funds. That is not interest to restricted funds or EMS departments, all those other ones that are restricted. So interest, we all know, is good right now at a local bank. Interest alone for GBGS, I had it figured up about 435,000 came in interest only, which is very good money. So I know Sheila don't like this number, but I'm just gonna state it. So we always talk about ending fund balances, like where do we wanna be at? Remember this board said we wanted to be at 25%. I just took what's in the pool cash on June 30th to what last year's budgets were and not this year's budgets, give or take a couple thousand. I got to figure it out at 46% ending fund balance. So a lot better than the 25% with those things that Sheila talked about. And then RSB is sitting at a 30% ending fund balance of cash on hand. We wanted to shoot for that 25, but we always talked about land use wasn't going to use all theirs, and then we knew EMS didn't need payment either. So those are the big tax bodies, GB, GS, and RSB. They're above the 25%. Any question, board members? You know, the question out there that I hear is, what are you going to do now? You know, we heard one presentation this morning already, you know, what do we do now? But there's always so much that we could do better. Many years ago, I said we should have a tower site built that we stopped paying rent for. You know, back when they built the anchor site, the county GBGS did fund part of that tower along with 911 surcharge funds. You know, do we try to build our infrastructure up with towers that are owned by the county and not by somebody else? Do we put restricted funds out there if this board wants to do that and we find it's okay to do that? Any other thoughts? We can do nothing too. And
Just, well, I think we should look at, I think we all know we have a lot of infrastructure that needs repair. Air conditioners, furnaces, windows, concrete. Maybe it's time we start doing some of it, or whatever we need to keep up with it.
Joan, did you have anything to add or?
Well, I know you got a work in paper in progress. I like to see, like I said, I like to see the expenditures and revenue, but I also want to see the original appropriation and then look at how much was a budgeted amendment. And that would give a true picture, because then you take your revenue off what you collected, and that's what the taxpayers are per fund. And if you, as long as your working document here does not show the road clearing or secondary road on RSP, so a lot of this stuff is missing that you're still working on. So is it possible after you get this off, if this is a suggestion, is it possible that that could be handed out so that you could explain that to the taxpayers, why you up of course, their levy rates accordingly, because you did switch back and forth between some of the funds, what was paid out of and where you're paying it now. That's what some of the tax burden want to know too, because a lot of people can't afford of their things, and that does not include, I believe, the tip money from that was not collected.
Yeah, we haven't collected a dollar in TIF yet, so that'll be next fiscal year.
Okay, but that's the error or whatever it might have been. The city got it all instead, we lost on that part.
That's just evaluations.
Well, that's still tax dollars that we did not collect, right?
Correct.
And then you're doing transfers, I assume for next year, this year.
We don't have any transfers for GBGS.
Well, I mean, for the landfill account, you're going to put into that, so that's gonna be making that ending fund balance even higher, correct?
It will, yes. 75,000 to RSB, 75,000 to GB. So, correct me if I'm wrong, if I can correct you, we did not raise RSB or GS, we lowered them this year.
Right, but you also switched some of the stuff that we originally paid out of GB or GS to another fund.
The weeds,
That was.
$700.
And also the
And
workers'
some of the
comp, and then
shares.
also the
Yeah.
share, the last year.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You're switching.
So what you would like to see is basically the paper, but have all the accounts and look at
I
it.
want all the funds. I know EMS is a separate, but just like your county budget by department, so that people can see what the original one, because you have budget amendments during your year, right?
Right.
Because I believe according to the Iowa code section.
So I put one in the paper with the budget amendments, with the.
Well, that's the county, but it's not a total, that's appropriations. But by the time you get done here, what you're saying is, you got that's why your ending fund balance is high. Then let us, the public, know what departments are, for the original plus the amendment, that'll give you a total, then the revenue, and that is what actually is costing the taxpayers tax dollars of that fund.
So you think
It's
is
almost
it misleading? Because by total there of what was budgeted has the budget amendments in there.
That is, but it's not the original, but you have appropriated.
You want the original.
Yeah, the original plus the budget
It's in the
amendment,
budget report.
yes.
Some of those budget amendments from grants.
Well, it's still revenue
I
coming in,
understand, but I'm just saying that some of those are grants.
and it's still revenue coming into those funds, so that people understand that, because maybe something along the line, you may not get those grants, right?
Then I don't buy stuff, I don't get
Well,
certain grants.
It's giving a true picture of what people want
Yeah.
to see
Okay.
per fund, because like I said, you did a lot of, and because the balances are quite high. So maybe what you're putting in different funds, maybe you could lower the GS and put some of that back into the general basic fund as a 3.5 max.
Exactly.
Because the rural people are paying that too, right?
Yes.
And then what we lost revenue, whatever it might have been, due to the valuation report or whatever it might have been, that was not collected. I'm just saying that the piece of the pie that people
Right.
really want to see, where are you spending your dollars? And now that we lost people, that should have an impact on stuff then too, right?
It does. It has impacts on workers' comp, on salary benefits, like in papers, everything.
It's just a suggestion, but I'm just looking at the taxpayer.
And I appreciate it. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. And what you want.
And that's what would help if you ever want to explain to a taxpayer then what is going on up here, what projects you're looking at, why you're having a budget amendment. Because you can, according to, it's in the same service, according to Iowa code, you can decrease that appropriation. Maybe you don't have to do a budget amendment. All you do is a resolution, because all you're doing is, it's in the same service area, it's
Oh,
switching
yeah.
departments. So that, all costs. If you're trying to save money.
Any other questions or comments? Dave, anything?
No, I just responded to John's comment by saying these numbers are preliminary only. But based upon my reading of these two sheets last night, you guys projected a budget shortfall for these departments, GB and GS, of about $88,000 for last fiscal year. And you ended up with a surplus of roughly $1.18 million.
And you cut.
These numbers. What, John?
And then they cut departments too.
Yeah, so they projected roughly a $100,000 deficit and ended up with a $1.18 million surplus.
But the projection was based on not fund balances. It was based on what the revenues that we anticipated coming in and the
Correct.
expenditures going out.
Correct, what I'm saying is, yeah, if you didn't dip into your fund balances, your savings at all, your checkbook, when you bring in what you spend, you projected $100,000 loss in your checkbook.
Right.
And you ended up with a $1.18 million surplus in your checkbook. That's not touching your savings. That's how I read this.
And that's kudos to the departments bringing in more revenue on some. But they need to let us know that too, so we have those numbers in March. Um,
Okay, you're 327,000 heavy on revenue, which is good, and you're 942,000 light on expenses.
Correct.
And then you also cut personnel, where would that also cut revenue in some departments.
Right. Yeah,
So that's where some of your revenue is not quite as where it should be at.
or Mike's, the revenue channel for the public health. I was thinking mine was expenditure, but I see where you're coming from, for the revenue.
And talking about environmental health, we did that budget amendment for that grant, and it looks like the grant didn't get used, or the revenue didn't come in. So,
They're behind, they only come in
Correct.
the quarter.
so
So that, and we cut that, of course, so now it is what it is.
Yep, and that moves on to the budget amendment, I think we're open to do a budget amendment if more grants are out there. Just like if we have to do one for EMS, if we got a grant. I think we're always open for grants from other agencies or nonprofits to do a budget amendment to change that expenditure and or revenue coming in. Everybody done with the ending fund balances? Anything else you want Sheila to get?
So where are you guys, we have another meeting, once you get this all,
Yeah, we'll see where we're at, Joan, with all the secondary roads / RSP. That wasn't in these worksheets, but yeah, we can do more.
if you don't, then I'd like to have a copy.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks.
Discuss budget amendment number 1, fiscal 25-26. I know you guys don't sometimes like this right away, but there's some things that we have to get going with. Again, the air conditioner was out this morning. It was out since Saturday. It's up and running
It was
now.
pretty warm in here this morning, you guys.
So, we have court systems, we have other departments, county, state, whatever. We are still waiting on that spec sheet from the local contractor to give us a spec of that air chilling unit up on the roof. Once we get that spec out, we heard the estimate, but that is range of an estimate. You guys all got an email from Lisa, Public Health Director, about well testing. If we want to do that additional grant for sanitation. And then like the comment I made this morning about a tower project or any other projects out there.
And then the veterans needed, their revenue increased if they wanna be able to get.
More
paid back.
grants
Yeah.
for the VA grant. So those things, if there's anything else, we can send out an email. Really like only to do 1 or 2. So I'm not pushing for this one, but sometime in August, maybe, we should look at a budget amendment to clean up some of the stuff that we weren't prepared for.
Well, since I'm here, and I just talked about this morning, either 1 and 2 capital projects, one-time put in, or budget amendment for, so I took it out this year, vehicle outfitting, based on what I gave back, just based solely on what I gave back. I didn't know these numbers till this morning, so, I guess my request would be 80,000 this time for the vehicle outfitting.
How much?
80,000, whether it be as a budget amendment into my current budget or the capital projects account. Either or.
And then if we ever move forward with TIF, that would need a budget amendment too. We're working on that hopefully in August, September on a secondary road project. And then if we ever want to add, we heard it in the budget work session, but do we want to see where we're at now with a vehicle for this county conservation? and or cold storage. Not saying to spend it all, but maybe some of those capital projects need to be looked at. Anything else? I think it's fair enough to get an email out and see if we're missing something from a department head.
Yeah, I can do that. You know, all departments. The two vote on this discussion on budget.
Fair enough? Alright,
Can I ask a question for public health? Can we amend our budget then? Because we have zero and something, and a lot of the line items that we had to last year.
just send an email out, see what you guys bring back.
Okay,
We're always open for discussion.
So there's a consensus with you guys.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for consideration.
All right, moving on then on the agenda is the award of contract for human resource consulting. We're back to the timeline. About a month and a half ago, we went out for an RFP. We got 3 bids to come back. You guys can see what happened last week. We were deadlocked on a 2-2 vote on a couple motions, so wondering if anybody else has done any research and bring any new ideas of where we want to go with HR. I did get a phone call from the current one, just wanted an update of if they've done something wrong, if they could do more, could do better. I gave her my 2 cents of where we potentially could be lacking in the handbook and stuff like that. So,
And they want to work on it.
I was working on that, yeah.
I guess I'm kind of in the same boat where I was last week. I think we just need an HR guy or person, company, right?
Anybody else have?
So you're talking PJ Associates. The only thing that concerns me is that department heads emails stating confidentiality, and then his professionalism in here really didn't sit well with me. If you're gonna present to a board and present a contract, you need to be as professional as possible. I would be fine with staying with our current provider, given that they're willing to work with us on the handbook and other things that we need. Hopkins and Huber, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, are concerned with the conflict of interest there in Heartland.
And I'll pick back off that, Isaac. My concern would be also with that, and is it county hours or is it Heartland hours? And who's gonna dictate the separateness, the separation line there?
I'll make a motion to continue with Howard Cooney at the current rate. Second.
Motion by Isaac, second by Steve to stay as is with Elo's opinion at the $1,800 per month. Noting that there's always a 30-day out if need be. I guess one question, Isaac, for the motion, is this a year or 2 years or?
I'd like to stay with a year and see where we're at. Reassess it every year to see if they're helping us with our handbook and the things that we need.
Any more discussion? If not, roll call. Isaac? Steve?
Aye.
Travis?
Aye.
Scott? Aye. Jake, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Committee assignment. Anybody have committee assignments?
Had a FMC landfill meeting last Tuesday. Just
just approved the bills, went over the budget where we stand, or if everything's looking good, we're right on track with the budget. Then we had a discussion on whether to fix the track loader or trade it off. It needs about $30,000 worth of repairs. We decided to do the repairs in the end and try to keep it for at least a couple more years. It's about 6 years old. It's got about 8,000 hours on it.
Who's that?
Landfill.
Okay.
But the price of a new one is gonna cost us about $600,000, so. That's all I got.
What date was that?
It's Tuesday,
First,
yeah, the first.
Jeff didn't?
No.
I didn't. Steve? I didn't have any either. Discuss future agenda items, remind you, we're gonna meet at 1 next Monday due to the, achievement auction at the Big Four Fairgrounds. There's an auction in the morning, a couple of our kids are at those, I believe. And then go out and support them if we have time.
Is there any more discussion with Homeland on their
I
presentation?
have not received anything. I can email, text her today and see. I know Ray wants to be on there for the solar ordinance.
That deal I talked about last week for workforce development, we need to put that on. They changed the meeting date now.
Is that Iowa Workforce?
I sent you all, email there.
So we got workforce, we have the solar ordinance. We're missing EMS, sheriff, and the treasurer's quarterly / semi-annual reports. Anything else you guys can think of? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second. Motion by Scott, second by Travis to adjourn at 9:57. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, any opposed? Motion carried.